Welcome to Voices from the Abyss. If you're listening tonight, you're not alone. Beneath every stretch of open water, there are depths we've never seen and things we've never discovered. Tonight's story begins in complete darkness, miles below the surface, where something ancient is still moving. So settle in, get comfortable, and listen closely, because far below you, something is awake. People like to say that drowning is peaceful. Eventually, the panic fades. The body simply goes quiet, like slipping beneath the surface is somehow gentle. But the truth is far uglier than that. The body fights, even after hope is gone, even after logic is gone, even after the mind begins to break apart. Tonight's story is called Surface Tension. Haley thought Vince talked too much. However, he did have the redeeming quality that he was very good at keeping nervous people calm. "You ever been in a cage before?" he asked as he steered the boat through the rolling blue water. Haley glanced up from where she sat, tightening the strap on her watch. "Not the ones designed for sharks." "I'll count that as a maybe." He grinned at her over mirrored sunglasses. Big beard, sunburned nose, Hawaiian shirt stretched over a thick chest. Jack Black energy, wrapped in saltwater guide professionalism. The boat cut forward gently beneath them. The ocean around Catalina was painfully beautiful this far out. Endless blue water flashing silver under the afternoon sun. And sharks. Real ones. Not behind aquarium glass. Not on a screen. Right here. Right now. A thrill moved through her chest at the thought. Fear too. But she'd come to learn that fear and excitement were close relatives. "You nervous?" Vince asked. Haley snorted softly. "A little." "About the sharks?" "No." She leaned back against the bench seat, resting her hands behind her head. "About drowning." Vince gave a casual laugh. "Well, hey," he said. "At least they say it's one of the most peaceful ways to go." Haley looked at him. "I hope to never find out." "Fair enough." The boat slowed as Vince moved towards the stern and began tossing chunks of bait overboard with practiced laziness. "Dinner bell," he announced. Haley watched oily red clouds spread through the water behind them. A few moments later, dark shapes began moving beneath the surface. Large ones. The boat drifted now instead of cutting forward, rocking gently with the swell while the shadows circled below. Haley stared out at the horizon and thought about sleep. Or rather, the lack of it. 3 months touring after the album dropped. 3 months of clubs and flashing lights and hotel rooms and strangers and pretending adrenaline was the same thing as happiness. She was exhausted. A level of exhaustion that made her think she had forgotten how to sit still. Her manager had called this trip grounding. Haley thought it was funny that grounding involved being lowered into the Pacific Ocean inside a metal cage. Still, the water looked peaceful from here. At least, that's what the ocean told her from the surface. The cage descended slowly beside the boat. Haley adjusted her regulator as Vince clipped the final line into place. "All right, Rockstar," he said. "Basic rules." She held up one hand. "No sudden movement. Don't stick limbs outside the bars. Don't panic if they bump the cage. Equalize pressure. Stay aware of my signals." Vince pointed at her. "See? You don't need me." "I watched your safety video." "Nobody watches the safety video." Haley smirked faintly for the first time all afternoon. Then Vince helped her into the water. Cold swallowed her instantly. It wasn't unbearable. It was sharp. Electric. The Pacific wrapped around her wetsuit and stole the heat from her skin in one long embrace. She lowered herself into the cage. And then she entered a different world. Everything above water became distorted noise and sunlight. Everything below became muted and peaceful. Blue. Infinite blue. Haley gripped the bars lightly as the cage settled several feet beneath the surface, suspended beneath the boat by thick chains that creaked softly with each swell. Her breathing sounded enormous inside her own skull. In, out. Bubbles streaming upward in silver chains. For a moment, there was nothing. Then the first shark appeared. It emerged from the blue so smoothly, she almost didn't notice it. A massive great white gliding beneath the cage with effortless control. Sunlight striping its back in shifting patterns. Haley felt her pulse spike immediately. Not with terror, but in awe. The shark moved like the ocean had been built around it. Another shape appeared deeper below. Then another. Haley forgot herself for a while after that. Forgot the tour. Forgot the noise in her head. Forgot everything except the sharks circling slowly around her in the blue silence. Peaceful. Beautiful. One passed close enough that she instinctively pulled her elbows in. Its eye rolled towards her, judging. Haley pointed at it through the bars. "You are way too confident for something named after a lawyer," she muttered through the regulator. The shark continued past without caring. Rude. Jokes aside, she almost understood why people worshipped the ocean once. Then something slammed into the side of the cage. Haley jolted so hard she nearly lost the regulator. A massive gray shape exploded past the bars in a blur of muscle and teeth before vanishing beneath her. Her heart launched into her throat. For one horrible second, she thought that the shark had rammed the cage on purpose. Then she saw the torn chunk of bait drifting nearby. The shark circled lazily back into view, completely uninterested in her. Haley let out a shaky laugh into the regulator. "Cool," she breathed. "Awesome. Very normal experience." Above her, Vince gave a lazy thumbs up from the boat. She could tell he was chuckling at her. Haley flipped him off underwater. Vince looked down towards the cage and barked out a laugh once he saw it. "Oh, good," he called. "You're comfortable now." Haley gave him another middle finger for emphasis. A few minutes passed after that in relative calm. The sharks drifted in slow circles through the blue while the cage rocked gently beneath the swells. Haley found herself relaxing despite everything. Her breathing slowed. Her shoulders relaxed. Above the surface, Vince settled onto the bench near the stern cooler. She glanced up and watched him dig through a tackle box before producing a crooked joint from somewhere inside it. Haley stared at him through the water. Vince looked around theatrically, like a teenager hiding from a teacher, then lit it anyway. Smoke curled into the afternoon air. Haley laughed silently into her regulator. Unbelievable. Vince took 2 long drags, leaned back against the cooler, and stretched his legs out into the sun. The sharks continued circling. One brushed the cage lightly with its tail before disappearing again into deeper water. Another passed beneath her slowly enough that Haley could count old scars carved into its flesh. Time softened. The ocean moved in slow rhythm around her. Above, Vince's head gradually tipped farther and farther back against the cooler. The joint burned lower between his fingers. After a while, Vince sat motionless in the sunlight while smoke drifted lazily from the forgotten joint in his hand. Haley glanced up and shook her head. Then her regulator clicked dry. Haley froze. She inhaled again automatically. Almost nothing. A thin, hollow pull of air. Her chest tightened instantly. No, no, no. She looked up towards the boat. Vince sat slouched against the cooler near the stern, head tipped back, sunglasses crooked. A lit joint burned slowly between 2 fingers resting against his stomach. Sleeping. Haley slammed one hand against the cage bars. The sound vanished uselessly into the water. Her regulator clicked again. Empty. Panic hit her all at once. Her body instinctively understood the situation before her brain could process what was happening. No air. Haley waved both arms violently upward towards the boat. Nothing. Vince didn't move. She tried to climb. The cage rocked hard beneath her as she kicked upwards towards the surface, but the roof bars stopped her short. The swell lifted the cage just enough for her fingertips to brush open air before gravity dragged everything back down again. So close. Sunlight rippled inches above her hand. She could hear the ocean's surface moving. She could hear the world, but she couldn't reach it. Her lungs spasmed. The first involuntary inhale reflex hit like a punch to the ribs. She clamped her mouth shut hard enough to hurt her jaw. Think. Emergency release. There has to be... Her movements became frantic now, fingers fumbling blindly along the bars, along chains and metal and welded corners while her chest burned hotter and hotter. Another reflex hit. Stronger. Her body no longer cared what her mind wanted. Air. It wanted air. The sharks continued circling peacefully around the cage. One drifted close enough that Haley could see her own distorted reflection in its black eye. Then another shape moved fast beneath her. Too fast. Haley looked down just as a great white surged upward from the blue directly under the cage. Its mouth opened slightly. Rows of teeth flashed white. The shark shot upward hard enough that the entire cage jerked violently sideways. Haley screamed into her regulator on pure instinct. The shark slammed past beneath her feet and kept going, not attacking, chasing a drifting chunk of chum that floated somewhere behind the cage. The massive body disappeared upward into the sunlight before curving away again. A fake-out. The ocean equivalent of getting clipped by a bus mirror. Haley's pulse hammered so hard she thought she might black out before the drowning even started. She kicked upward again desperately as the swell lifted the cage. This time her face broke the surface for half a breath. She sucked in a ragged mouthful of air mixed with seawater before the cage dropped again beneath the swell. Her fingers hooked through the bars overhead so violently that several nails bent backward against the rusted metal. Pain ripped through her hands. Then the ocean pulled her under again. Her lungs convulsed violently. And this time, her body won. The inhale came sharp and instinctive. Seawater flooded her mouth, her throat. Cold exploded into her chest. Haley jerked violently against the bars as coughing instinct took over. But coughing underwater only dragged more ocean into her lungs. Salt water burned down into her chest cavity in liquid fire. Her vision flashed white. Every instinct she possessed became singular and absolute. Up. Air. Surface. She clawed upward again blindly, fingers slipping against wet steel as the cage swayed beneath the waves. For just 1 second, the swell lifted her high enough that her forehead broke the surface. Air. Real air. She opened her mouth desperately and swallowed another wave instead. Salt water crashed down her throat as the cage dropped again. Haley gagged violently. One of her torn nails peeled further back against the bars, and she would have screamed out from the pain if it wouldn't have sped up her commute into the afterlife. In the brief moment her head was above water, she could hear freedom. She could hear the boat creaking softly. She could hear gulls somewhere overhead. She could hear Vince snoring. The absurdity of it almost made her laugh. Dying in a shark cage because her guide got too high and took a nap. What a headline. She couldn't hold back the scream this time. Only seawater came out. The ocean swallowed the sound completely. The drowning after that became strangely quiet. The pain changed. The burning in her chest softened into weight and depth, pressure replacing fire. Her limbs were becoming weak now, movements slowing, despite the terror still screaming through her mind. She could feel her heartbeat everywhere, in her throat, in her fingertips, inside her eyes. Her body kept trying to breathe, each attempt pulling more water into her body. The sunlight above the cage had become blurry and fractured now. Beautiful, in a distant, horrible way. Like looking up through stained glass. One of the sharks passed nearby, close enough that its shadow swallowed the light around the cage for a moment before drifting away again. Haley's thoughts were becoming strange, disconnected. She thought about the stage lights from Chicago, about kissing her ex behind a venue in Portland while rain soaked through both of their jackets, about her mother teaching her to float when she was 6 years old, and how badly she suddenly wanted to sleep. Her hands loosened from the bars. The fight went out of her body slowly, almost gently. Above her, the Pacific rolled endlessly beneath the afternoon sun. Peaceful. How does someone drown in their sleep? Detective Alvarez stood in Haley Bennett's apartment, staring towards the bedroom. The paramedics wheeled the body past behind him. 29 years old. No drugs. No signs of violence. No water in the lungs. And yet every witness statement from the neighbors described the same thing. Choking sounds, thrashing, pounding against the wall, like someone dying underwater. "Hell if I know," Vince said. He stood near the kitchen counter, casually holding a cup of stale apartment coffee. Detective Vince Mercer, tall, bearded, exhausted eyes behind tired humor. He glanced once towards Haley's bedroom as the gurney disappeared into the hallway. Then he shrugged softly. "At least they say it's one of the most peaceful ways to go." Alvarez looked over at him. You ever almost drown? Vince's expression flickered for just a second. Once, he said. As a kid. And? Vince stared down into the coffee. You don't forget that feeling. The apartment fell quiet around them. Somewhere down the hall, a camera flashed. Evidence techs murmured softly to one another. Alvarez watched Vince for another moment. Did you know her music? He asked. A little. That's not what I asked. Vince smiled faintly into the coffee cup. No, he admitted. I knew all of it. Alvarez nodded slowly like he'd confirmed something for himself. Then he glanced toward the bedroom one last time. Funny thing, he said quietly. People always think fear kills you first. Vince looked up. But sometimes, Alvarez continued, the body keeps fighting long after the person's already gone. Neither of them spoke after that. Outside, somewhere beyond the apartment windows, the distant sound of waves rolled faintly through the city. Thank you for listening to Voices from the Abyss. If you enjoyed tonight's story, make sure to follow so you don't miss what rises next. And if you find yourself near the water, listening, just remember, not everything beneath the surface is asleep. Good night.